it is going to be the first time within a professional, physical brick and mortar proprietary trading operation that there is a writer in residence, right? And to start preserving these stories, think of all the lost stories that we'll never hear again. Start now, and that's what the asymmetrist is to give birth to stories that are happening consistently, and for people who are not on a trading floor, for those remote traders who operate by themselves as their own singular organism, to understand that, wow, I had that same feeling that night. I had that same experience that night. Or, wow, there's a whole entire way to operate and process that type of information, or a whole new opportunity landscape, or a whole new way to think about how I approach trading.
Traders, it's been a while. But let me reintroduce myself. I am Bogdan Stoichescu. I was born and bred on the AXIA prop trading desks, where I went on a secret, but not so secret mission, a full-blown retreat into the shadows, Jedi mode. And you'll hear about that story soon enough. After 3 years of deep work with Alex Haywood, that is 3 years of ink, graphite, and relentless focus, I've stepped onto a new path and a new frontier. I've rejoined the AXIA London floor, but not as a trader, but as a writer in residence. And that is my focus now, capturing stories instead of ticks. In doing so, I've launched the Asymmetrist, a digital micro magazine dedicated in covering the world of professional proprietary trading. The goal is to preserve and immortalize these trading stories from around the world, because these stories, unlike the markets, are anything but transitory. I'd even argue they are the most powerful tools in your arsenal, whether you're a novice trader or a seasoned veteran. Stories, when captured in their purest form, detailed, factual, yet creatively shaped, stay with you. They change you. And as traders, isn't evolution what we prize the most? So what does the Asymmetrist publish? For one, there are the dispatches. These are narrative-driven reports straight from the trading floor, often AXIA's London office. They are about the unusual, the educational, the memorable, trades, stories, and key learning points. And why not read one of these dispatches right now? Look below in the description and click the link to read about Stamina, a 6-figure Japanese election trade. And there's much more, all free to read. Just subscribe to the Asymmetrist to get these dispatches as they happen, straight delivered to you. And very soon to follow is the second strand, the feature. These are multi-part explorations of the trader and their life, alongside a much deeper dive into various topics. Both the dispatches and the feature are original, exclusive stories. You won't find them anywhere else. And they're written unlike anything you've read before in our prop trading space. Now, I'm going to talk to a true fan of the Asymmetrist, Alex Haywood. He's not just a reader, he's a recurring character in many of the stories you'll be reading. Right now, I am the sole writer, editor, and publisher of the Asymmetrist. I wear many hats, but this is just the beginning. The Asymmetrist isn't a blog, nor will it be forever a magazine. This is the foundation of something much bigger. To go beyond digital, beyond micro, beyond magazine. It is our shot as traders in such a transitory world at immortality. And so I present you now Alex Haywood. Okay, so now with some editing magic, Alex has just materialized yet again. And Alex, thank you for joining me.
I'm incredibly excited, Bogdan, just incredibly excited to discuss this most wonderful project and to really riff about the articles that you have written and brought to life from the AXIA trading floor.
Thank you so much, Alex. And I know, look, let's just dive right in because we can prep and pre-prep so much. I know Stamina is one of your firm favorites. That means, when I say Stamina, I mean the article if you haven't read it yet. Stamina, a 6-figure Japanese election trade, which was written and, well, traded back in September 2024.
Yeah, so I mean, from a Stamina perspective, this is a trader that has been so synonymous with AXIA from a performance, asymmetrical sizing, goes along with the entire name of the publication that you have now weaving into the consciousness of all of our traders. And I must confess, Bogdan, I know we're speaking about the articles, but one of my favorite parts about the asymmetrist is the email that, it gets transported into the inbox. And when I see that email, one of my favorite parts is actually reading the email. And the whole reason, it's almost like you create this incredibly eloquent, summarized learning journey before the actual outcome of the performance. So I almost see it, in two segments. Is that email that, at least that's how I interpret it. And everyone's going to interpret the asymmetrist, uniquely differently. But what I love about the stamina email is, that little phrase, that 0 to 60, that, from first gear to sixth gear, driving that non-symmetrical or asymmetrical sizing, which the Cypriot, the trader, where we've shown multiple, seven-figure trades, six-figure trades on our YouTube channel over the years, and unleashing. We just had a retreat in the Bahamas, and unleashing violence or violent action into the market, and the stamina. I mean, there's so many angles that I've love to attack. But one of the most important parts that you mentioned in the email before the actual articles, if you signed up to the asymmetrist, the moment you sign up, you will receive a notification via your inbox, and that email is just its own special gold mine and treasures of learning. And one of the main elements, you speak about his ability to go from 0 to 60 or first gear to sixth gear, and that he doesn't bring his baggage from the past, the non-volatility. He has this uncanny ability, regardless of what momentum or inertia of past performance, that he leaves his baggage at the door. Like he enters his domain, or if he does bring his baggage in, he galvanizes it in such a way, and you can give me your feedback on this. He galvanizes it in such a way that, regardless of his performance, he's going to ensure that he's going to take opportunity for opportunity's sake. And most people don't take opportunity for opportunity's sake. They take their past, they bring their past, they project their future, and it creates this noise in the moment. And the stamina. I mean, if we look at that of the stamina, the stories of his last seven-figure, not his last, but a seven-figure trade where he came off the boat from Mexico, and he arrived from Tulum in London, and trading, traveling across the ocean time zones. And then all of a sudden, New Year's Trump, the Trump Iranian assassination, and all of a sudden he's executing a seven-figure trade overnight. And that's stamina in itself, going across planets. So multiple areas of the stamina, and one of my favorite parts of the stamina article and publication is that use of white space. So when he speaks about the Japanese trade, and I actually spoke to, I spoke to Demetrius, and he told me when he read the article, you invigorated, you brought to life when he entered that trade, and all of a sudden, traders, we love it when we enter a trade and it falls off the page, especially if we're going short, falls off the page. And he felt that as he was reading the article, and you started describing his trade, in the stamina article, and all of a sudden he sees, oh, what's all this white space? And it's the drop of the trade. So I wanted to ask you how you use, your delivery mechanisms, and we'll tackle more of the questions that we want to go into. But just wanted to ask you about your delivery mechanism in cultivating these articles, and your underground perspective, especially with regards to the stamina.
Yeah, Alex. No, thank you so much. Look, I think finally I can nerd out about this. Okay, so if viewers forgive me for about 120 seconds, perhaps more, to nerd out about it. Look, I think the written medium. Okay, for all the moving into a short form era, moving away from perhaps written to video or written to something else, audio. I still think the written medium, just you can do so much with it. It's kind of like we've come full circle where much was done in the past, and there's very important, very useful models of how things were done in the past that are just sort of left by the wayside. It's like lost technology on how to make writing resonate powerfully with people. And so it's sort of like, for me, a personal challenge, like, let's say I'm goal setting, or like thinking about what really motivates me to trade, in the same way what motivates me to write and capture this from just a very self-satisfaction. It's how can I capture a real story in a moment in time and put it through all these different techniques, all these different formats that's going to be interesting and resonate with the reader and force you to actually read it. Like a lot of the time when you read nonfiction, it's like you're there for the message, but you can't summarize it, so you can skip it. And actually speaking to, Demetrius about it, what he also liked about it as well was how the writing and the delivery forces you to also read it in a positive sense, because it's like you can't skip it, because you can miss things, and it's sort of that for me signals that there's depth and interest in the story, rather than just getting the pure details. So it's kind of like the destination is important, like what lessons and conclusions to improve you as a trader. Of course, that's vitally important. But why not have a really cool journey along the way while you actually read it and actually enjoy the damn thing while you're reading, instead of making it feel like you're reading an academic textbook? And that for me is basically the power of creative nonfiction summarized. I know it's a contentious term for some people, but it's essentially capturing realism, realistic details, realistic facts, and putting them in a way where, as you can see, I kind of make a joke in the article about realism or not, because I think you can keep what's very real and factual and important, and then sort of like shape and form the connective tissue to make the story much more interesting, And how we, I make the joke that we sort of all, you magically appear in the back seat of Demetrius's car. Obviously, if you're going to read that, that I had the separate conversation with you, but I just, I had the device. There's no point breaking up the story that way. Like, might as well just bring you in very naturally, like you're reading an actual story. So that's one. And two, yes, and there's so much you can do. Like, you can be creative with white space. Like, why not just have things flying off the page? Why not have, why not break it from a very like thick, dense magazine Q&A to then the story suddenly changing, and we jump into Demetrius's brain. We see it from his perspective, and then you have that stream of consciousness rundown, and then you want to shift the pace of the writing to make it very like action packed, like for you to see and feel of what it would be like. Hence why as I said, hopefully you'd be short when things melt off the screen, and that's how I did it in that sense. To briefly, that was 120 seconds, but yes, and to wrap that up, actually, I think you're very much a product of what you digest. In this case of my writing and what I was reading at the same time. And readers, again, to nerd out, readers might be familiar with Bulgakov's Master and Margarita, and I was reading it, I think, a few months before I wrote this piece. And I think it's sort of, you can see how it affected me, with just things materializing out of thin air. One of the most powerful things Bulgakov does there is having a very sort of crazy, discombobulating, rip-roaring, set of characters going through Moscow, a set of magical characters, the devil and his entourage. But then we move to a very realistic, almost as if writing about Jesus, Pontius Pilate, his crucifixion. And it's weird how he made the events in Moscow, which are very sort of magical, and then he took the stories of the Bible, but wrote in such a realistic, factual, like historical, like textbook kind of way. And it just makes both just more engaging and believable. And that's how he, from a very meta perspective, engaged both of those mediums. And sort of, again, I'm not equating stamina to the work of Bulgakov here, but I'm just saying it's how one can learn from what came before, and everyone's sort of forgotten about it. And, the lost technology to make things good and interesting are just there.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost creating, also bringing, a medium or a body of work, make it contemporary as well. All these lost mechanisms or technology. As Angus Fletcher always mentions, writing, literature is one of the most transformative technologies, and that's the purpose here. Of the asymmetrist and your work within the asymmetrist is creating that transformation, because story, literature, narrative by its definition is action, the cause and effect. And so reading a article such as Stamina, where we also incredibly fortunate to be tapping into an elite 8-figure plus a year trader that getting him on our YouTube channel. We've been fortunate that we've been able to break down his trades over the last decade, to share that with some of the community, and also bring to the industry, an industry that was collapsing in London, of what still is possible from the human trader perspective. But what I also love about so if I segue into the article, what I love about the article, and speaking about, Bogdan has this first experience with Demetrius where, we don't get, people don't get to have, a one-on-one interview with him, so you are almost that messenger, that what's that famous Greek messenger god? I can't remember his name. You should remember Hermes, exactly. So no, Hermes, yeah. So you're the Hermes for all of our elite traders.
That's one way to put it. Yes.
Yeah.
Bang on the money, perhaps. Yeah.
You're our Hermes that these traders, then on our YouTube channel, you don't get to have access, but how do you make them accessible to our traders on the floor? Even our junior traders don't have sometimes as much accessibility. So how do we use the written form to give access? And so just that very first couple of lines in the Stamina article. So this is like going from the email to the article, and that first little part where he says, Bogdan, you're the anti-jinx, or the anti-jinx Christ. You have this higher power, and let's not abuse the power. And you start connecting to his almost his higher spiritual being of how he looks at trading. Right. And, as we, do more articles, you kind of discover that he brings a higher power into his trading. And I know in some of the literature, those who believe in some higher power somehow can also rev up conviction in the moment, that this is, their chosen time. And it's interesting, it's interesting how the brain works. So you get that sense of this, so-called godly conviction. To execute, and you get that, me knowing him for so many years, he's the godfather of my firstborn son, and you just, when you read that part, you say, wow, okay, this is someone that is different, that is non-linear in his approach. And back to the email, is a lot of people try and apply a linear mindset. You mentioned that in the email, a linear mindset in a non-linear landscape.
That's exactly what you mentioned earlier about, people perhaps approaching things in a very linear way, approaching their trading in a linear way, even being beholden to the past. And you said that beautifully as well now and in the article. And it's even perhaps, I noticed this, I know because I used to do this as well when I first started off as a trader, the long lost days before AXIA. I think there's a huge tendency where you want to make a very linear based risk management protocol in a very naive way, where it prevents you from going from shifting gears from 1 to 60. And if perhaps if you basically you're now beholden to rules to make yourself think linearly and act linearly, and you've already fighting a losing game in that sense.
Yeah, and let's talk about the aspect of leading into that trade or that month. And I want to reemphasize this, going from first to sixth gear, this non-linearity, the kind of being not at the mercy of your form, and that ability for most of the year, or since April 2023. From a performance perspective, it wasn't his greatest momentum years, but his ability to shift gears, where all of a sudden the separation from the other traders within the group started becoming a profound differential. And that profound differential on performance, by you putting that down in this literally in the story, will inspire other traders within the group of, how do I ensure that I don't bring a baggage? How can I shift gears when it necessitates it? And that is also one of the main purpose, of Asymmetrist, from my perspective, is bringing to fore, because we can't go and watch these traders on TV like watching Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, or winning a sports game. So what's the next most powerful form to bring that to life and show what is possible? And so what is possible is what then creates the new frontier. It creates that new type of exceptionalism. And one of the most fascinating areas of his art, is with regards to Demetrius, his ability to observe the outlier, process the outlier, and act violently on the outlier. And that ability to and I'm using that phrase from Angus Fletcher on a recent high performance retreat that we just had in Bahamas a couple of weeks ago, is his ability, which no outlier machine predicts the future by digesting the past, whereas something that has never been digested from the machine, his ability to create significant damage on the market by deploying all the size, taking on that type of risk, regardless of the past. And for me, that you gain that sense, that feeling of richness when you read the article. And so for any of our senior traders, like for me, this is also a mechanism to inspire our traders within the group. And so when you read these articles and you read the stamina, you feel like, man, if I see this opportunity, why can't I, like this hybridized thinking perspective, why can't I unleash that type of conviction, provided I've cultivated the skill set? How can I shift that mental skill? And that's what I gained from the stamina article.
Absolutely. You said it beautifully. And you see here, if it's now a memorable piece, okay, if it's done its job for you to memorize this and it causes change within the trader to act differently next time, or it inspires the trader to progress and improve or so on, or the next time you have a very similar situation and you act differently to your benefit, then, I mean, how worthwhile is that,
Yeah.
From reading a so-called just an article or just some words on a page.
Yeah, and I think it's worth exploring now that you just mentioned just reading a so-called article, just the power of storytelling and its role in education. I mean, from my perspective, I use storytelling, and now that we have the asymmetrist, for me, it's the greatest mechanism for coaching is storytelling. I effectively describe myself, I'm an active broker of stories, and from the pain and the healing via story. And my traders don't necessarily listen to me nearly as much when I share a story of another trader, whether on his pains or profits of performance. So and you probably have that own experience. You speak to many of our junior traders, and so when we share the stories of our performers, whether they've made or lost money, the ears prick up. You can sense of how they visually engage in you, that they're listening more. And so effectively as a coach, I am just that broker of stories, and using each story to leverage a different type of method of learning or an acquiring of a skill for the trader. And so the asymmetrist, over time will become this portfolio of stories, or soothing balm if you're struggling, or if you're needing to step up your if you having to step up your performance, motivation of what's possible. And the nature of storytelling is a mechanism to create and instigate that change and deliver high performance. And so I think our ability to have grown as a group over the last years is the sharing of story. And for me, that's where asymmetrists will use all these multiple mechanisms, which you have, which again, we'll be speaking about the special project that will be released in March of next year, in the future. And that's what is one of the most powerful primary methods for the asymmetrists as this instigator of change.
You've explained it beautifully, Alex. So thank you. One thing there to note as well, even the fact that there is the asymmetrist to capture these stories to begin with, I think goes a very long way, because so much of the if you plug into the lineage and the a group network of traders and so on, it's very much I think it's kind of like how much of early human civilization was all based on oral history. and that oral history goes with the people. And when as it was in real life and as it is on the trading floor, when those people eventually retire and move on, and something, all the stories and experiences are lost.
And
And it's how you can immortalize their experiences and stories, put them into something that is probably the least the least technology based, meaning the most de-risked in terms of some platform or app or technology becoming obsolete, because it's just literally words on a page that has survived. As we've seen, story and words have survived the ravages of time, and for thousands and thousands and thousands of years in whatever format. And they've been passed down to us in that way. And it's sort of like, how can we immortalize these stories in the best possible way, in both technique, so it stays with you, but also just physically, that they can be captured before those traders move on, retire, and their stories and experiences are lost forever.
yeah, and that's always the tragic nature. It can get lost to the abyss forever, and we're trying to. You have access to the risk screen of an incredible group of traders, right? So, and you speak about that. I can't recall which article actually in the Asymmetrist, when you speak about the risk screen and this building of all these little personalities. Which article is that again?
It's actually the very first one. The first Dispatches article was called "A Cut in Time" on the FOMC night in September.
Yes, so Ray, I mean, those of you who haven't seen a group risk screen, I mean, it just described it metaphorically, just so beautiful. And but that if I were to ask, those of you watching us now, what story got you into trading? Now, there's been the evolution story, and I'm going to be asking Bogdan, what story got Bogdan into trading. And I remember my original story of what got me into the financial markets. But there's also been the evolution and the nature of the story that is true. There's multiple story threads that get people into trading. There's been the crypto kind of easy money or the Lamborghini lifestyle story. So, but it's still a story that gets you into the market, right? Now, what the asymmetrist, from my perspective, is maybe that more truer essence, or that thread that is the more golden thread of the reality, but also bringing to the forth of this high performance industry and the sacrifice that these traders expose themselves. Demetrius is consistently chained to his desk during the week, where then he lives his he goes from the yin yang to his good lifestyle on weekends. But that story, that evolutionary story, is you generally enter the trading space on this outcome of this financial reward, whether it be Lamborghinis or a certain lifestyle. But as you gain more understanding, we want to bring the asymmetrist of within creative nonfiction. In that creative sense, what is the reality of our game, but what is also those pain and those stories and the nature of performance? What does it look like from a true perspective? So our story thread, we're trying to bring those stories, and once traders start seeing and digesting and assimilating and metabolizing these stories, there they can start galvanizing the true direction of what the path of a trader should be, and what's required and what sacrifice that you need to be willing to do to become a top performer. Because, as you've mentioned before, there is no middle league. There's either, zero or Premier League, in the financial markets. And that for me is bringing out almost the true story of trading. And one of the main ones that got me into the markets were the market wizards, but having to evolve and get closer, and that's what's so exciting about the dispatches. So if you can just explain why the name dispatches, Bogdan.
Dispatches, yes, there are two reasons. So one, they're a bit more short and sweet and kind of like more action packed of just trying to capture like things that happen on the floor. It's kind of like it's just taking the name from the like in the 19th century, there was a tendency for to be mentioned in the dispatches from a warfare perspective. Like there'd be something going on in some battlefield, and someone would commit an act of bravery or exemplary service, and then they would write home a report about what happened, and then someone would be given the honor to be mentioned in the dispatches. It's not so much bestowing honor upon that trader, but it's more about these action-packed after action reports, essentially, of what's happened. And I mean that in a realistic sense, because they are very much time bound. Like, it's I hold myself to that level where I want them to come out as fast as possible, and that's the challenge for me. How can I write it creatively in an engaging way, but with a very short and strict time limit? So that's an interesting challenge, because from a writing perspective and an execution perspective. But the dispatches, because they are meant to be, again, short, sweet, and based on what just happened, perhaps 2-3 days ago. Unless we break it up into multiple parts, and it's a bit longer than that. But yeah, it's just capturing what just happens there in the moment, and hopefully readers will also, they can compare what they've just done 2 days ago versus what they're just reading right now.
And Bogdan, if you can also explain the almost the mechanics of how you execute dispatches from your sources. What, for example, on stamina, how do you go about collecting? I know when the other article, I know today we're going to speak mainly about stamina and the cut in time, the US elections, but with regards to where you have a whole floor performing or underperforming, if you can just explain how do you go collecting the stories? How do you go collecting the narrative?
By being embedded on the trading floor. And yes, you're right. That's also part of the dispatches. By being, you had a lot of reporters back in the day that used to write these kind of things, and they would write these things because they're literally there seeing it. So it's a lot of first-person observation of me picking things up just by being there. I mean, a cut in time controversially starts with someone in the bathroom before FOMC, which is funny, because a lot of people try to corner me and be like, "Oh, were you writing about me?" I'm like, "No, it's actually writing about someone else." But this is the whole point, because that you captured someone there in the moment going to the bathroom, but it's a truism, because that's the hurried, quick, bathroom break, like just before an FOMC meeting. I've done the same. I know it, and I'm like, oh, I'm cross comparing my own trading experience and career, and versus now what I'm seeing from a sort of like a writer's perspective, and then so it's sort of like, this is why this is a mix of first person self insertion into the story, like it is, for example, in the US election one, where I was there this time not as a trader but as a writer, and just being there on the floor, both with Mario, who was risk managing the night, with the traders as well. And then just basically reporting it, but in an interesting way. I have that quick phrase, literally being a writer in residence on the trading floor. I think that's the best way to explain it.
Yeah, and it's one of the most unique, mechanisms now to deliver these narratives in that creative, or these stories in that creative way. And you touched on the US election night, and I don't know if we wanted to, we can jump around between articles because they all interconnected. And on that US election, you mentioned Mario, and who heads up, he's got multiple hats. He heads up the group. He's also that shoulder to cry on, when a traders are struggling. And he's effectively that Atlas Shrugged, right? In the sense of having the weight of the traders on his shoulders, and was quite rare that night of trading the US election, where you had multiple traders, close within the 400K dollar mark that night, even with almost a non, as you said, a non-twist night.
Yes.
And within that evening, I wanted to ask you, writing that article, what was that like for you, being in the risk room, seeing Mario? And I know you've seen him before in other facets when risk is going a little bit more volatile. The risk screen that night wasn't that volatile. So if you can just explain your first-hand perspective in writing the piece, and if you can just mention again the name of the full piece, and then just your experience in that risk room.
Yes, it's the night with no surprise, and that basically summarizes the entire experience, because both for the traders and both for myself, Alex, to explain it, talk about perverse incentives, because as a traders, I know we're all hoping for the volatility and the calamity and the chaos, And now I'm kind of wanting the same because of wanting to write something as well. But obviously, whatever the story is, if whatever happens, it's your skill and responsibility as the writer to get the story across. And I think that was a very, very, very important night, precisely because of how do you manage yourself in these actually more rare instances in this occasion of when there was no twist, no plot twist, no nothing, and it was just this sort of steady building night, which is a very, very interesting experience. And might I add, it was my own experience of stamina, chilling pro, because I was there till literally 5 a.m. in the morning. At one point, sort of, like on the plane when you start drifting off, and CNN was going on in the background. I mean, Mario was there, full blown, like attentive, whatever. But at one point, it was a hot room. I was like, oh man, when something's going to happen? And then after a very few hours sleep, the next day I literally rocked up at the desk and started writing it, and I think that's very much mirrored for the traders themselves. Like they left a few hours later than me, but then they will have to rock up to the desks very quickly to trade whatever could happen the very next day. And who knows what could happen the very next day. So many things could have happened from a trading perspective, events perspective. And then I got out the piece on the Thursday, I believe. So there's a very quick turnaround. How can I capture it beautifully? How can there be an embedded message? And actually, this brings me just to full circle, Alex. This is the beauty, I think, of, again, just to nerd out about writing a bit. There's this whole conundrum, when you do English classes, English literature classes in school and so on, and it's all about find the meaning, find the symbolism. And I think sometimes when you, in turn, when you then are assigned these writing pieces, wherever you are in life, in school or whatever, I think there's this tendency where one tries to fit in and I'm saying this is a bad thing to do, to try and fit meanings and symbolism and everything else. But I truly believe in a lot of the message a lot of early 20th century writers were doing, and filmmakers and so on, that if you represent the picture and you're trying to capture the moment in time in of itself as pure as you can, then there's infinite amount of messages and symbolism, and because it's up to the reader to take away from it. And I see that effect already. If you just capture it in its most realistic, pure, pristine, crystalline form, and getting the experience of what it was like on that night for the US elections or stamina or anything else, there's just so many takeaways. There's practical takeaways, there's more meaning takeaways, and I've already got that feedback, from people reading it already, and I'm pleased to see that, rather than me trying to think, okay, I'm just gonna sort of make up this how can I capture that story? So that was the challenge for me within Tuesday and Thursday of executing it and writing it. So it was a very long week. It was a very short week and a very long week. Full of fever dreams trying to write this.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's perhaps it is going to be the first time within a professional, physical, brick and mortar proprietary trading operation that there is a writer in residence, right? And to start preserving these stories, think of all the lost stories that we'll never hear again. And so let's not, start now. And that's what the asymmetrist is to give birth to stories that are happening consistently, and for people who are not on a trading floor. For all those remote traders who operate by themselves as their own singular organism, to understand that, wow, I had that same feeling that night. I had that same experience that night. Or, wow, there's a whole entire way to operate and process that type of information. Or a whole new opportunity landscape. Or a whole new way to think about how I approach trading. And our brain, our creative brain, I think it's located in our motor cortex, is the ability now to have that story infused in us to make us to make us grow. And back on that, the night without a twist on the US elections, I want to emphasize how I love the email again. So one of my favorite parts is when the asymmetrist hits the play button, it's firing off, and an article hits my inbox, and I can't wait to uncover the email. And why that is probably my favorite The Night Without the Twist. That's my favorite email. And just to let everyone know, even if you've never signed up to the Asymmetrist before and you sign up today, you can go look at the archive section, and you'll be able to, in the archive section, you'll be able to see all the past emails alongside with the articles. And one of my favorite parts is working for the future. So one of our top traders, we call him the engineers, how he's Evernoted or Notion, how he's kept these journals, and they have this asymmetrical payoff as you develop your observation over time. And so the trader who survives between elections creates the optionality for himself to exploit opportunity from his lost memory bank of how he traded the last election, and seeing any of the exceptional information between the last Trump election, 2016 to 2024, is that there were more twists in the night, and this time the trader that won the day, and you gain that as you go from the email to reading the article, the trader that won the day was not the trader who is highly prepared on the fundamentals, but it's a trader who's skillful in order flow, and then digesting that information of the order flow, and be able to, before we receive any information on the swing states, which we were waiting for in 2016, the predictive models have become more powerful. The mail-in votes that started happening in 2020 because of COVID. There's more mail-in, and once those got released, the predictive models became active, and larger time frame traders were starting to deploy capital during that time. And so watching our order flow traders now. If there was a twist, our traders who made 400K could have probably made 2 to 3 million. Okay, we're waiting for a twist. That's why there was that twist in the Japanese LPD night, the stamina night. There was that twist in a sense that the market was going in one candidate direction. And then, you bring that out so vividly in the article, in the Japan night. And then all of a sudden, the other candidate, when the vote came in, but you still had to be a connoisseur of order flow, because those who waited for the translation from Japanese to English missed the trade or missed the bulk of the trade. In this instance, the order flow ninja was the one was able to exploit it. And so those are my favorite part, in the email, just the heavy lifting of doing the linear, boring, you mentioned, the boring lifting constantly day in, day out. And it's boring lifting almost in a linear, consistent way that creates that non-linear opportunity down the road when all of a sudden your Evernote pays you off or your journaling starts paying you off.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, we spent a long time thinking about what's the proper name for this journal and everything else. And that is why, in the end, I think asymmetrist is the most powerful word for it, because it's not only, I think the trader and the professional of the future will be the ultimate asymmetrist. We've moved, this is a very long and deep conversation, which we will have 100%, Alex, but we've moved from a very high level, from an industry and a market that supported linear and symmetrical edge that can be captured. And now we moved into a market that demands absolute, practitioners that are asymmetrical, that can wait out and wait and wait and wait and wait and go from 0 to 60 and tap into that asymmetry. And what that phrase, tap into that asymmetry, is what you just mentioned. The engineer, he uses that as a phrase, that he is very, 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 very conscious of thinking, okay, where is the asymmetry? Where is the asymmetry? And he leverages up. But again, that could be applied to everyone who is, 6-figure trader, 7-figure trader, 8-figure trader. There's obviously differences along that path, but inevitably to get to those stages, you have to be the ultimate asymmetrist operator. And for me, from a very high level, it's, we're capturing all these stories, we're writing about all these stories, but it's also now for me a journey to uncover all these operators of the future who are the ultimate asymmetrists. And we're going to write about them and break down what they do and understand where the game is going next in that sense. Alex, thank you so much for your time. We have a million things to talk about, and we will do so for sure. So we'll keep this one nice and sweet and short-ish. For all of those, true fans and readers of the Asymmetrist currently, and if you've read these articles already, Stamina, The Night Without a Twist, Defeating the Discombobulating Dialectic, another one which we haven't spoken about. If you've read any of those, please leave a comment down below of what you thought, anything that resonated with you, any takeaways. That would be amazing. What you'll also spot if you scroll down below to the description box and follow the link to the Asymmetrist, I prepared everyone a special document, a special ebook, in fact, to take with you on your Kindle, on your iPad, on whatever reader you use, to take on an airplane, on a train, whatever mode of transport, in a car, assuming you're not driving, because you'll have a lot of downtime during the holidays. And I think that's a perfect way to either catch up with your reading for the Asymmetrist or begin fresh. So follow the link down below, and if you sign up, you can get that ebook very quickly and efficiently. Alex, thank you so much. My last little thing to say there, by the way, is you mentioned about coming into trading with a story. That's probably the most beautiful way to summarize it. And I'll also add, you come in to trading with a story, and you do also in turn leave behind the story. And I think that is the perfect way to summarize a career in trading.
Absolutely. And I mean, just to finish off, if you wanted to mention the other part of Asymmetrist, that you'll be releasing the stories of many traders who've been in it for a long time. And there's dispatches, and then that final part is the long form interview.
Yes. Long form interview. It's mainly, yes, long form interviews called the feature. It's a deep dive on many things, but a lot of the time it will be these multi-part beautiful breakdowns of people's careers in a very detailed, fleshed out kind of way. Dispatches is a quick sort of, embedded on the floor, get this out, a story. Whereas the feature is this, a trader's whole career, the ups and downs, the realistic parts, the behind the screens, behind the monitors, behind the people, and just getting all that on paper.
Yeah, and sorry, one final word from me to if you're still watching us at this very moment, you have not subscribed to Asymmetrist. If you're serious about your trading career and you want to have a mechanism to transform how you see yourself in the market and what is possible, utilizing and leveraging what we have on the floor for yourself remote, Asymmetrist provides that. And the stories are going to be coming thick and fast over the next 12 months. And see what it does to you and how it transforms your understanding of not only yourself, but your place in the markets and your ability to navigate multiple conditions, just like our traders at AXIA. I highly suggest that you'll be completely different individual on knowing what's possible within yourself by infusing yourself with these stories.
And on that, let's finish on our mic drop. Thank you so much, Alex. You described it beautifully. And see you again very soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.